Welcome. Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights here with a weekend episode entitled The Greatest Generation. A little bit of a tribute to my father. If you remember, approximately a year ago, my father interviewed him. He's still around. And it turns out my father-in-law as well is in his 90s and was just had a birthday as well. So this is a little bit of a birthday pre-tribute to my father-in-law and my dad. And I've titled it The Greatest Generation. Thanks sponsors, Topps Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. The greatest generation, they would be in their 90s, and also known as the silent generation by some, or the World War II generation, or the GI generation. Both my father was a Navy officer, and my father-in-law was in the Army. Both served, I think, around the Korean War time more so than the World War II, because my father-in-law was born in 27 and my dad was born in 25. And those were ancient times. Just life expectancy in those days was less than 60 for males and a little above 60 for females. I've got a father-in-law and a mother-in-law, a mom and a dad that are 90, a pair of 95s and a pair of 93s. My parents born in 25 and Diane's parents born in 27. It was a long time ago. Gold was $20 an ounce. And, there were 100 million people in the United States and a couple billion in the world. Just a much simpler life. For my own personal reference, if you've been in my office, you'll see that in 1925, when my dad was born, Pirates won the World Series. 27, when my in-laws were born, the Yankees, the famous 1927 Yankee team. In fact, one of my favorite cards, it's just to be Sports Card Insights, is my 1925 rookie card of Lou Gehrig. I've got some Lou Gehrig art and some Babe Ruth art, and the Lou Gehrig exhibit card is his rookie card. It's something I picked up and it wasn't a big deal. In fact, I picked up a couple exhibit cards of Lou Gehrig, and then I looked up a number. Again, this was in the 70s, and then I looked up and realized that one of them was from 25, which would be his first nationally distributed card, and a really nice card. So plan to get it graded by BGS to protect it, but it's been at the bank for decades, and I just popped it out and looked at it, not in conjunction with this, but just because I look at my cards every once in a while. In 25, when my dad was born, that Yogi Berra was born that year, Manny Minoso, and if you look at all the big leaguers that came up during that were born in 1925, 95% of them, there's only a handful that are still alive. And same thing with 27 with my father-in-law. Probably 90% of those are alive or have passed away. But that includes Richie Ashburn, born, Nellie Fox, and Tommy Lasorda. So they were contemporaries and all characters. Tom Brokaw wrote the book about 20 years ago about the greatest generation. And there are like 5 things that characterize that, and they apply to how we choose our heroes, I think, even though there are not many. The newer players don't always apply to this, and this doesn't always apply. But number 1 was personal responsibility. And I just would say, don't we want that from our enduring heroes on the field, that they don't blame somebody else if they struck out? And it never seemed like Roberto Clemente ever struck out, but I know that he did. Michael Jordan did not always make the last shot, and it's on them. They didn't blame something, so we appreciate that. Humility, the new form of humility, that it's not bragging if you can back it up, is baseball. One of the reasons we love baseball is that even though it's a team sport, you are up at bat against a pitcher, and it's 1 against 1. And cheating scandals notwithstanding, you either pitcher wins the battle or the hitter wins the battle. Number 3 was work ethic, and I think that's something that's always true. How do you get ahead? Obviously, it starts hopefully with some ability, but that ability is nurtured with a strong work ethic. I've often wondered, and there are counterexamples to this, but when you're trying to pick out who you're going to invest in or collect, and especially, whether it's baseball, but especially with basketball, if they're 2 stars and one of them has a strong work ethic, but perhaps not as much superstar skill ability, and another one the same age is the opposite. Ideally, you want work ethic and this amazing skill, but the person that has the skill and doesn't work at it, I tend to think that in many cases, the person with less skill but a greater work ethic can pass them up. Number 4 was prudent savings. Again, this was a summary from a financial point of view, but when you look at the card collecting world, what does it mean to prudent saving when you're talking about collecting a player? The long-term view has been come into question lately, because In baseball, you think this guy could have takes good care of himself. He could be around for 20 years, build up some great statistics. But we've seen some early retirements, especially in football, because the money's so big they don't really need it. So long-term thinking of investing in a 20-something football, baseball, or basketball player and assuming they're going to be like the greatest generation and endure for a long time, not necessarily the case. And lastly, number 5 was the faithful commitment. And that is one of the ones I lament. Don't really just want to talk about marriage, although both my parents and my in-laws have been married 70, almost 70 and more than 70 years. What a wonderful testimony. But in sports, we don't really talk about, Dirk wasn't married to the Mavs, but he was loyal to the franchise and loyal to the city. And I love that.